many people, or pretty well everybody in our culture, has a subconscious standard of perfection, or a standard of what a person has to do to be respected, to belong to a peer group. And so that standard, when you start to look at it, even though it's subconscious, it includes what kind of body do I have to have? What about my weight? How pretty do I have to be? How smart do I have to be? What kind of personality is most popular? What kind of clothes do I have to wear? What kind of talent and ability do I need? What kind of job? What kind of money? All of those, you might have a standard that you weren't even aware of. And if you fall short of that standard, then you feel anxiety. And you feel that everybody in the world is operating by the same standard, so you feel that everybody's going to judge you, reject you, if you don't measure up to that standard in your life. You look at people in your world who seem to meet the standard. Sometimes you look at people who are the most popular. And what you usually find out is they seem to meet the standard better than others. So they're prettier, they're outgoing, they're funny. They are just this very warm type of person. And so you go, see, that shows the standard is the basis for acceptance. The standard is the basis for having value. And so you compare yourself not just to the standard, but to the popular people in your world. And if you don't measure up to them, it creates anxiety. And you have insecurity in the areas where you don't measure up to the popular people. So those are two things that happen in pretty well everybody, basically at a subconscious level. Now let me give you this definition, this statement. Everybody deals with insecurity from time to time. It can appear in all areas of life and come from a variety of causes. It might stem from a traumatic event, and we're going to get to that, patterns of previous experience, the popular people, how they were treated, social conditioning, that unspoken standard, learning rules by observing others, or local environments such as school, work, and home. So that kind of summarizes what we've been saying. So it's important to understand up front that every person, whether they grew up in a healthy home or an unhealthy home, will experience some insecurities at some time in their life. That's just part of life. But what I want you to understand is people from complex trauma experience tons more insecurity. And beyond that, I want you to understand is a child from a healthy home, when they feel an insecurity, their parents will help them process through that insecurity so it doesn't become a debilitating issue in their life. But children from complex trauma, they have lots more insecurities, but then they don't get help to process through those insecurities. So those insecurities, they respond to in ways that make things worse. And those insecurities become debilitating. Basically, they become like a prison to them. And many of you relate to that. And so again, complex trauma, more insecurities than a child from a healthy home, respond differently than a child from a healthy home, and respond in ways that actually make things worse. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you've been asked to tell your story, or you are going to start a new job. You've not done either of them before, and so you have a certain amount of nervousness, a certain amount of self-consciousness and worry. You have insecurities, okay? Everybody, whether from healthy or unhealthy, who's asked to share their story for their first time or start a new job is going to go through some of that. And so the night before, or the 2 nights before, you might have difficulty sleeping because your brain is wondering about this new thing and is a bit anxious about it. Okay, so that's normal. So what would a healthy child do with that? They would get tools. You know, everybody's nervous. You just sit in it. Don't run. Don't do anything crazy. This is all part of what is normal. Push through it. You have the ability. They'd validate them, encourage them, and a child would go and do that. And then they would come back and their parents might, or friends might say, you did a good job. Or they might say, you know what? You have a lot of ability in this area. And then over time, they might be told, here's what you could do to improve and become even better at it. And a child would be open to all of that. So they would be insecure for a bit, but would sit in it, push through it, go through the experience, and become stronger because of it. Now bring in complex trauma, unhealthy response to telling your story for the first time or starting a job. You would obsess for days. You wouldn't be able to sleep. Your anxiety would go through the roof. It would trigger your stress response in a way that would put you back into fight or flight. You would be in survival mode. And so you might try to back out. You might try to come up with excuses why you can't do it. You might eventually go through it, but then afterwards you beat yourself up. Or as you're preparing for it, you're expecting yourself to do it perfectly. And so after you do it, if you find one mistake that you didn't do perfectly, you get down on yourself. And it becomes a negative experience. And for many, they go, I'm never going to do that again. I'm out of here. So the complex trauma child, this situation has actually resulted in greater fear, greater shame, greater anxiety, greater insecurity. It has become a more negative thing in their life.